They say the loudest people in the room are usually hiding the biggest secrets. My wife, Sarah, loved being the loudest, especially when my best friend David was around. David had the sports car, the corner office, and the bank account to match. I just had a solid, quiet job that paid the bills. For months, I noticed her eyes lingering on him a little too long. I noticed her phone constantly flipped face down, so I decided to test a theory. I told her I was leaving for a weekend fishing trip, but before I backed out of the driveway, I secretly turned on the baby monitor in our living room and listened from my car. What I heard through that little plastic speaker left me frozen. It wasn't just flirting, it was a complete betrayal. I listened to my wife and my best friend laughing about my boring life. I listened to them confirm an affair that had been going on for 6 months. I didn't burst through the front door. I didn't scream. I knew immediately that losing my temper wouldn't be painful enough for them. I needed absolute, undeniable destruction. So I went on my trip, smiled when I got back, and waited for the perfect moment. 2 weeks later, David hosted a massive dinner party at his penthouse. Sarah was in her element, wearing a dress I supposedly couldn't afford, drinking champagne, and commanding the room. About an hour into dinner, the conversation turned to vacations. I said I was looking at a quiet cabin getaway. Sarah rolled her eyes, looked right at David, and said loudly to the entire table, "Honestly, sometimes I think I should just swap my husband for David. At least then, I'd get to see a beach that doesn't involve a public boardwalk." The room went dead silent. A few people nervously chuckled. David smirked. Sarah looked at me, expecting me to shrink into my chair. I didn't shrink. I smiled. I slowly reached into my inside jacket pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I didn't hand it to Sarah. I slid it all the way across the long dining table until it stopped right in front of David. "Go ahead," I said, my voice completely steady. "Open it." David's smirk vanished. He opened the flap and pulled out the contents. It was a stack of high-definition screenshots from their private messages, a copy of signed divorce papers, and a detailed spreadsheet of the $45,000 in hidden credit card debt Sarah had racked up, trying to keep up with his lifestyle. David turned completely white. He dropped the papers like they were on fire. Sarah grabbed them, her face draining of all color. She started to stammer. "Mark, wait, this isn't—" I held up one finger and she choked on her words. I looked at David and said, "You wanted the high life with her? Congratulations. She's your financial problem now." I stood up, looked at Sarah one last time, and simply nodded toward the door, telling her that her packed bags were already waiting on the front porch. I walked out of the penthouse, leaving 20 people in absolute, suffocating silence. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a screaming match. It's walking away with your dignity while they sit in the wreckage they created. If you want to hear more stories about hidden actions, difficult choices, and emotional consequences, make sure to subscribe